Amen. Amen. Okay. So we went with A. For those of you that were picking B, I'm sorry. Actually, this is really a revamped version of A, which would have been C, because I put A aside, went with B most of last night, and then switched back to A and re-edited it. So Julie can tell you, the Rebbitzin can tell you, I came to her at about 11:30, said, I got to go down and redo this. She goes, what? I said, well, I just changed my mind about it. Or I should say, hopefully it was he who changed my mind, because I really felt that this flowed better out of James chapter 2 than where I was going. By the way, where we're going is to the idea of possessing everlasting life. So that will be after we finish this whole works thing. Okay, I think that will make more sense after we finish this, so, which is the way it originally was in the original teaching. Anyway, so this is the part we call the afterburn. And so if you have a comment or question on this teaching, specifically this part, if you can keep it to that, that would be good. If it has to do with more, the rest of all the parts up to this, I mean, after all, we're up to part 10 already. So there's a lot that's been said. A lot that's been said over the last 10 parts. But you're welcome to raise your hand here locally. Daweed's got a microphone for you. And if you're on the live stream, Kurt's got the live stream desk. Okay, we can start with Mr. Steve Sullivan.
What you were talking about a minute ago, when we start living for him, we do things that identify with him and how he lived. And that's how we, I think, incorporate his life into our life.
Amen. And see, and that's why they put that verse in there that talks about resisting unto blood. He did. You don't think it was tempting for him when they were doing stuff to him to just call down the legions of angels and blast everybody? I'm sure it was. He even mentioned it, right? He said, well, I could do it. But that would undermine the plan. And he was going to stick to the plan. See, there's a plan. And in that plan, there's suffering. Because that's part of the baptism of fire stuff we talked about in the teaching called baptism of fire. Stop being so, what's the word I'm looking for? You guys have a high level of pain avoidance. It's a big part of you. You want to avoid all of these disciplines and all the pain. So instead of dealing with stuff, you want to run away from it and avoid it because you think that you can avoid it. But see, in your life, if he's the one in control, he's going to lead you back into the pain to wake you back up one way or the other. So any of you tried to run away from him, you end up in a Jonah thing. Trust me. Okay? If you've tried to run away from him, he's going to find you anyway, and he's going to wreck whatever it is you think you're doing that you're so smart about to get your attention, to get you back where you're supposed to be. Now, you may be successful for a little while and start thinking, see, I knew it. Look at how great it is. I'm working on Saturdays now, and I'm making 10 times more money, and I'm getting double time, and I'm paying all my bills, and then, believe me, something's going to blow up in your face. And if it doesn't, you know what that means? He's started looking somewhere else. He's not looking at you anymore. So the fact that it doesn't mean you're right. It means that maybe you're so wrong. He's putting you in timeout. He's like Israel when he put him in timeout and dispersed him and said, okay, go live with the pigs, right? Like the prodigal son. Go squander your inheritance and do whatever you want. Play with the pigs. So don't think just because it seems like it's working and you seem like you're getting success that that's the endorsement. Because otherwise you sound like one of the prophets that said, how come the wrong seem to be doing so well? And Abba said to him, don't let that distract you. That's temporary. That's only an appearance. It seems like they're doing well. It's only an appearance. All right, who's next? Okay, Sarah Beth?
Yes, I had a question, but I also wanted to thank you for the analogy you gave this time about the salvation versus reward. I understood the others, but this one clicked, so I appreciated it.
Good.
In chapter 12, starting in verse 12 and 13, you kind of read through them fast. It's a command, and I don't understand. It's like, so strengthen the hands which hang down and the weak knees, and make straight paths for your feet, lest the lame be turned aside, but instead to be healed. What does that look like?
All right, so why are the hands hanging it down at the side and the weak knees? What's the point? It's the person that's given up. Okay, they're not struggling and resisting onto blood. They've quit. And with quit, you're not going to get healed. With quit, you're not going to get anything accomplished. He says, strengthen the hands that are hanging down, strengthen the knees, stand up, take the discipline, make the changes, move forward, be healed, pursue what you need to do. Okay? This also connects up with James chapter 5, I believe. Hold on. Okay? You can put that all together there in chapter 4, where it says, draw near to Elohim, verse 8, and he shall draw near to you. Cleanse hands, sinners, and cleanse your hearts, you double-minded. Okay, and eventually it says, humble yourselves in the sight of the master, and he'll lift you up. So it says, get through this process you have to get through. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to dejection. In other words, get over it. The stuff that you want, that you don't get to have, the stuff that you love and you can't do anymore, that's okay. Lament, mourn, and weep, and get over it. And then let the Father lift you up and set you forward. But it's got to start with humbling yourself in the sight of the Master and let him lift you up. But if you're going to sit there trying to figure out ways to still have what you can't have and do what you're not supposed to do and try to find loopholes and ways to bend and twist the law, you're not ready. So you got two sort of metaphors, the idea of the hands, washing the hands, lifting the hands, strengthening up. Yes, take the beating, get all humbled and knocked down, and then look up to the sky and allow him to lift you back up and to set you back straight and make the appropriate changes. But when it talks about the weak knees and the hands, picture that person, they look like someone who's been beaten. They've quit. It's done. The discipline was too much. I can't tell you how many times I have to talk to you guys, and you know who you are, and yes, I'm picking on you without calling you out. And by the way, if it's you, know that it's you and 37 other people, not just you. But when I've had to discipline you, I've also had to get you to not quit. Don't quit. Take the discipline. Oh, but then I'll make a mistake again. Yes, you will. And then you'll get up again and don't quit. But what if? Do it again and don't quit. Why is it that we want to run away and quit? Well, because I don't like all this stuff. Good. Then you're not supposed to like it. Fix it. But what if I can't fix it? You can fix it. It may take you, that's why he says to forgive 70 times 7. It may take you 390 times. Right. Amen. Nobody said you were going to get it on the first 5, 10, or 20 times. The only problem is quitting. That's the weak knees and the hands dragging, and you're just kind of, So when you get disciplined, the answer to the discipline is not quitting. The answer is not blaming the person doing the discipline. The answer is sit down on your knees with the Father and say, Father, why did this happen to me now? What is it that I'm missing? Do I need this? Do I deserve this? Was it really me that was, because our defensive nature is to lash out at the person giving the discipline. Or to redirect it like, why are you blaming me? It was the other person's fault. They made me do this, and they did that first, because that happens a lot, because I get called in the middle of stuff. Okay? And as we talked about earlier, it wasn't on the teaching, but we talked about earlier, I've got a 2nd degree in head slap, and I want to head slap everybody when they bring me in the middle of it. Because if I'm in the middle of it, everybody's at fault at some level. So stop pointing the finger, to own your own piece of it, and let's get forward. You may not like my style, but it's not going to be ambiguous and confusing of what is expected. Okay, you're going to hear a lot of knock it off and let's go forward. Let's grow up and let's deal with these things and not run away. You ever watch a little child? What's their first reaction? To run away. Aren't we a lot more mature than that? Or hopefully aren't we much more mature than that? Stick it out, get in there, grow from it, and let's become the type of people Yahweh wants to spend the rest of eternity with. And the thing that we have been missing all the way through all of this is that maturing process. The children of Israel need to become the adults of Israel. Okay, and that's why there's not a single verse calling them the adults of Israel. Because up to Revelation at the end, you don't see a whole lot of growing up. So they keep getting called the children of Israel. We got to grow up. And growing up means you got to own what's you. I'm going to say something a little different than I've said, but it came up a couple of times recently, so I feel like it needs to be on something, and then the Afterburn, we'll have it recorded. Okay? I talk about getting off the self-sovereign throne and how self-sovereignty is a big problem and all that stuff, right? You've heard me say that? Okay, I'm going to reverse that temporarily. You need to get full self-sovereignty over yourself, control over yourself, so you can then subjugate that sovereignty and get off that throne and give it to Yeshua. You haven't even really gotten self-sovereignty. You just jump in there and are self-sovereign wherever it suits you and get in the way of Torah observance and Messiah and the Father, but you're not really sovereign. You'll let other people manipulate you and other things manipulate you and other people push you around and other things push you around because you're really not sovereign. Your boss is, or your best friend, or your husband, or your wife, or your cousin, or your mother, whoever it is that's pushing you around that doesn't understand what this walk is about. You get full sovereignty and then get off the throne and give it to him. That's a different way of putting it. I don't think I've said it many times, but not on a recording, I don't think, but just so you hear it. You need to get fully sovereign, that nobody can make you do anything unless you choose to do it. And then you choose to completely submit under him. Did that make sense to everyone? Was that clear? But most of you have very sporadic sovereignty. You think you're in charge, but really other people are making you do things because you're not in charge. So remember, nobody can really make you do anything unless you've given them authority. I can put a gun to your head. I still can't make you do anything. You can just choose to not let me have that way and just let me shoot you if that's what I want to do. But you do not have to do anything, you see? But once you allow me to make you to do something, you've given up your sovereignty. Now, the reason that we struggle with Messiah and the Father is because with them, that's where we choose to be sovereign. That's where all of a sudden, I'm going to be in charge of me instead of giving up. So you're sovereign in all the wrong places. You take charge of your life in all the wrong places. Knock it off. You got to stop that. Get a hold of you. You know what? I know people don't like martial arts and they talk about all this other stuff. When I was in martial arts many years ago, one of the things that we taught people was this. If you can't control your body and yourself, how in the world do you think you're going to control the person trying to kill you? Trying to hurt you? That's why one of the first things we taught people was how to get control over their own body and their own mind. Well, that applies to this, doesn't it? You mess up because you're not fully in control of your body and your mind. And then once you can't give him and love him with all of your mind and body, etc., unless it's yours. And if other people out there have control and power over you and influence you to do whatever they want, not what you want, then really aren't they in charge, not you? Re-grasp and take control of your sovereignty, and then once you have it, fully submit it under him. Give it completely up. See, because if that were true, what your boss said would never bother you. What your mother, your sister, your cousin said would never bother you because that sovereignty has already been handed over. And so they have no influence. And there's nothing that they could do. That's where you simply say, I'm sorry, but I can't. I'm not in charge, he is. What else is there to say at that point? Anybody ever have a job or they've been to a place that someone on the job was an employee, just a regular low-level employee, not like the boss or a supervisor, in a store or something, and the employee would say something like, I can't make that decision. It's not my store. I'm not the boss, that kind of thing, right? You know what I'm talking about? That's you. You're just the employee. You're the vessel that you're following and submitting to him. You have to say, I can't do those things and make that decision. That comes from a higher level. And the higher level boss said, I can't do that on Saturday. I can't make that decision. Why are you asking me to come in on Saturday? I can't make that decision. The decision was already made by the boss. I can't do it. You have a problem, you can go to him. That's what an employee says at the store, right? Well, you could talk to the owner. Well, guess what? Weren't you bought and paid for? Well, tell them to talk to the owner. Next time somebody's giving you grief, can't do it, you have a problem with that, talk to the owner. I'm bought and paid for. You laugh, but some of you might actually do that. And just the fact that it's humorous might cut the tension with whoever you're fighting with anyway and you're struggling with. Sorry, not in charge. I'm just the vessel. Take it up with the owner. Does that make sense? Okay? We have to embrace this or we're not going to get anywhere. That's where, because all of us still have this much or this much of the mindset that somehow he's doing it for us, and it doesn't matter how badly we do this, he's going to ultimately just do it for us anyway. You're missing the boat completely. He's expecting you. He's watching you. That's what happened with Hevel and Cain. He wanted to see what they did. And what did he say to Cain, by the way? If you have a better belief system and manifest better works, won't it also be pleasing in my sight? If you do what's right, didn't he tell Cain that he could fix it? But Cain was like, no, I'm already offended that you liked his better than mine, that what I did wasn't good enough, and that doing it my way didn't. We all sound like that sometimes. It's awful. Doesn't it sound awful? That's right. Whine, complain. We're going to be getting a lot more of that here in the book of Numbers, okay, as we go through the wilderness. The Israelites are real good at that. Whine, complain. All right? Marty.
So you mentioned in the teaching about how some people believe that things are different after Yeshua died and resurrected than they were before, whatever those things are. And I was raised that way too, not really thinking about it. But the other day when Tanya and I were having Bible reading, in Proverbs 11:1, it says, dishonest scales are an abomination to Yahweh, but a just weight is his delight. And I just wanted to know what you thought about this because it hit me. So if the trays of the scale are what we would say the time before Yeshua and the time after, and Yeshua's life, death, burial, and resurrection is the scale, or whatever the thing is that, balance. So if he hates dishonest scales and Yeshua is the middle of that, how could it be different on one side than it is the other?
It can't.
If he hates that sort of thing. So it has to be the same on both sides for it to be right in his eyes, right?
That's a good analogy. And also you add to that where it says he's not a respecter of persons. Because if he's going to give to those after Yeshua's death, burial, and resurrection something different than those before, then he's obviously respecting them in a different way than he respected the other ones. So he's not a respecter of persons. And so you have that. We also have the verse that says that it's his desire, if possible, all men be saved. And so that would mean that everybody that ever lived or would live would have the same opportunity without any advantage or disadvantage to one group or another. Okay? And so these are all part of the issue. So, and it's good that when you start to embrace and understand, these things, you can see those instructions in all kinds of other verses like that one in Proverbs. Okay, you can really start to see these things. So that was good. And that's part of what we have to embrace. The problem is that, and some people say, well, why do you always keep picking on Christianity and stuff? Because very few of you are struggling with any other place you came from. And what my job is to help you remember and never forget not to go back to Egypt. In other words, a mindset that's going to lead you into these side routes that are not the truth. Okay? And so I have to show you where what I'm teaching is different than what they taught you, so that you can always embrace that. If this was an 85% or 90% or whatever Jewish group, I would be pointing out how the Talmud or the Kabbalah, whatever else, might be leading them into some level of confusion, etc. I have almost nobody in that problem. That's why we don't focus that way. Because somebody say, well, Rabbi, you always pick on that. How come you don't pick on anybody else? Because that's not who I'm talking to. Yeshua, by the way, and all the apostles knew they were talking to a Jewish audience. So there was an expectation that they understood that what they were saying through that understanding. And so they were talking to that audience with that understanding. He expected, this is the problem when Christians read the New Testament and they read Messiah's words and they have no Hebraic background or Jewish background, they don't understand a lot of what he says because he's not talking to them. He's talking to somebody who would have the context that when he says it, their mind would go to what Moses said or Isaiah said or Jeremiah said or whatever. But see, you don't have that background. You don't automatically go there. Now you're starting to. Why? Because all of a sudden now you're spending more time between Genesis and 2 Chronicles or Malachi than you spent between Matthew and Revelation. You're finally balancing that out a little bit. Because you spent very little time left of Matthew prior to now. Most of you, right? Okay? And so now you're filling the mind with stuff the Ruach can start to remembrance and connect up the dots to. And so that's why we bring these things up and mention how the mainstream teaches this or Christianity teaches that, because they do. And because that could trip you up if you were tempted to go back there or still have part of that mindset. After, on a regular basis, okay, I get contacts from people saying how much they don't realize the level of Christianity they haven't gotten rid of yet. Okay? People will contact me on a weekly basis and say, Rabbi, I just listened to this teaching or that teaching, and I can't believe that I still have this much of that old thinking and process still in there. See, part of the problem, though, is you got guys leading congregations that all they did was give up eating the unclean foods, stop doing Christmas and Easter and Sunday, and they think now they figured it all out. But their mindset's still all wrong. Their doctrines are still all wrong. It's all Christian. They've not changed any of the other things, just some of the mechanics. Okay, I don't eat pork and shellfish anymore, and I don't worship on Sunday, I'm on Saturday. Boom, I'm Torah observant. There's a lot more to it than that. And they don't understand, because one of the biggest challenges is that they are dispensationalists. What does dispensationalist mean? It means that there's something that was for somebody and that is now not for this other group. It was for a different time and now it's not for this time. It was for them and not for us. Marty was just pointing out how that can't be true, because that messes with the weights and the scales. It's all for everybody. Stop with the dispensation thing. But see, if you can't get that mindset out of you, I get people contacting me all the time. This is the question they'll ask when they're new. How much of the Old Testament moved forward into the New Testament? All of it. What do you mean all of it? All of it. Well, does that mean that we're going to do sacrifices now? You didn't understand the Old Testament. You need things to be in place to do that. Okay? Without a temple, without the Levitical priesthood in the temple, we're not doing those things now. So it's not that that didn't come forward. They all did it in the New Testament even after Yeshua's death. Okay? They all did them, continued all the way until there was no more temple in 70. Now, but see, it's a dispensational mindset that wants to know what was for them and what is for us. All of it. There's one law for the Israelite, and for the native, and for the ger, for the proselyte. There's one law for everybody. He's not a respecter of persons. He doesn't expect you to do one thing and you to do something different. That's a big problem. That's a huge problem. David.
I just wanted to speak to a little bit to the discipline aspect, just giving briefly examples from my life.
I didn't leave any marks, did I?
Well, let's just put it this way. You left good marks that will leave reminders to not do that again. But you left them in a very merciful manner. You used truth, which alone can only kill, but with mercy, it gives life. And that's what you did with me. And you're very merciful in the way you do that, which is better than any authority structure I've ever had before. But the point is that I've seen before I had you as my main authority figure, and before I had other authority figures, that they would try to give me advice, instruction, counsel on what I should do and what I should not do, and I ignored it. And then I went to learn from the School of Hard Knocks. And that is always to be avoided. You want to learn from somebody else's experience and doing, rather than trying to learn it on your own and getting beaten around all over the place. It's just common sense. Now, the experience yourself will stick better, so to speak, but it's the hard way to do it, and it takes a lot longer. But if you do it through someone else, like what happened with Moshe, what happened with all of the people all throughout the judges and everything else, if they're submitting to leadership and learning under leadership, which is under the leadership of Hashem, of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, then if they're under that leadership structure and listening to instruction so they don't necessarily have to get disciplined, then it's the win-win all around.
I mean, look, bottom line is also when I do work with David a lot, because he's, what he does? He wants it. He wants the leadership, he wants the discipline, he wants the correction, he wants the guidance. But one of the things I try to do with him, and I'll do with all of you, is if I am giving you discipline, it's for you to understand the reason is because it will help you avoid a worse thing. Okay, so when he gets it the hardest for me, I say, if you don't take this, you're going to end up here. So take this and I do it strong so that he hates it so much that he doesn't want that. I want him to know, you know, this is a wake up, because if you don't listen now, you'll end up losing your job or losing your house or losing your car or whatever this worst thing is. Okay? So discipline without understanding is a problem. So the discipline has to be followed by, you have to understand why I'm being so strong on you. Not just because of what you did, but if it's not disciplined and continues, you're really going to end up in a place that's no good. And that's where the whole thing comes, discipline with instruction and understanding. Go ahead.
The other part about it is that because of the way you do this and because I have a relationship with you, a working framework of a relationship, I know that you love me. So I can take it better than I could from any of the other authority figures that were in my life, even though to some extent, some of those were like parents.
Right.
I understood to a certain extent that they loved me, but they had their own dysfunctions.
Right, but even then, which I appreciate him saying that, I'm not always gentle. Okay, just so that's clear. Okay? But the reason I can get stronger and stronger with him is because I know that he knows where it's coming from, and sometimes the stronger I can be, the more he sees how serious and important it is, okay? And so that it can get the right reaction as far as him doing something, making a change. Because you know what? If I go over and I try to discipline you with a tickle feather and a coddling attitude, it's not discipline. Okay, nobody likes discipline. So if the discipline isn't causing you to be in a place where where it's grievous and you don't like it, it really wasn't discipline. How's that for a statement? Because all of you go, well, you know, Rabbi, you know, if you had said it nicer and if you would have done this and so in other words, you didn't like it, right? Well, then I'm doing it right. Okay? I know you prefer it not to be that way. But it's supposed to be grievous and not liked and not enjoyed and whatever. Why? So that you'll learn from it and not do it again. And that you'll make the change that's expected and necessary to avoid that. But I love the way people say, well, you know, I appreciate what you're doing, but I really would have liked it better if you had said it this way and done it this way. Well, stop that. The discipline is discipline. Enjoy the fact that it was awful and then realize that's what it's supposed to be. I'm not trying to be extra mean or extra awful. I just do what I do. You go to somebody else, they do what they do. Everybody does what they do. We don't really think about it, by the way. We're doing it in the moment, reacting to the situation, trying to help the person the best we can. And I'm not going to be able to sit there and think, well, what special way should I word this for you? Because I know you are going to turn into a big puddle if I blast you. Okay? And I wear special boots all the time so I can avoid the puddles and... Because that happens a lot. People just, you know, they fall apart. That's not handling that situation. All right, Wayne.
Okay, I just wanted to add with the discipline and the trials and everything we go through, we got to remember that in everything we have to give thanks. And when we give that thanks, we're showing true emunah. We're declaring to him that he's in control of everything. So it goes around in a circle of everything that, with the discipline and with the trials. So I just wanted to add that to your...
Amen. All right, let me ask you a question based on what Wayne just said. Is there anything in your life, at a moment in your life, that you wish now, looking back, somebody had grabbed a hold of you strongly and disciplined you so you didn't do something stupid that cost you a lifestyle problem or... Oh... And by the way, when you were in that moment back then, would gentle coddling have worked? Okay? See, so that's the appreciation, kind of like what Wayne's saying. Appreciate that someone loves you enough and cares enough to give you some strong discipline if that's what you need. Somebody may just look you in the eye and say, that's nonsense, knock it off. Because you're spewing all kinds of, spinning stuff that you guys like to spin. All of us like to do this, by the way, to kind of justify what you did, even though you know it's wrong. And you start putting all that, and I got like a zero tolerance meter for that stuff, and I'll look you right in the eye and say, cut it out, knock it off. That's not true. That's a lot of nonsense. Let's move forward and not be doing that, okay? And so you won't like it, though, when it happens. You won't. But I can tell you is if you get through the process and you embrace it properly, you'll get what he gets when he works with me and others do. At some point after that, I say, now listen, I care about you. I'm doing this because I love you. I don't want you to end up in problems. I want you to understand that I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be here to support and encourage you while you're going through this challenging process of fixing whatever it is that needs to be fixed. But you've got to do it. But you need to know how serious this is, and somebody needs to put that in front of your face, or you're never going to change it. Does that make sense? Okay? But we are so thin-skinned and fragile, it doesn't take much more than and we just fall apart. You'll run away from me, you'll run away from him. Let's stop running. Listen to the words of someone who's getting and receiving and getting results. You've all watched his growth and development in the last year. Okay? That's come because of a lot of receiving of correction and making changes because of it. And trust me, I've been as strong as a father could be with a son on purpose, knowing that that's what he's needed his whole life. Okay? But the credit is not mine, it's his, because he's embraced it. He's received it. Okay? And almost every time it happens, I get a text saying, thank you, I deserved everything you gave me and more. I get that almost all the time afterward, saying, I needed that. I needed that wake up. All right? So believe me, I'm not going to talk to you the way I talk to him. Everybody's different. I know where you're at in your personalities. Okay? Okay, his sister's right here. She gets it a little different than he gets it because it's different people. But she gets correction just like anybody else. Okay? But it's knowing who you're dealing with. So look for a leader that knows that. Okay? But that doesn't mean you're going to like it. If you don't like it, that means you're getting the right stuff. To some degree, okay? I don't mean like abuse and everything else, but it's supposed to be something you're not excited about and desiring. Otherwise, you'd never change.
24 elders in Revelation 11:6, aren't they the Old Testament saints from when Yeshua resurrected at his death?
Okay, that was not a part of the teaching today, and
Well,
I'd have to go back and study out the Revelation elders.
Well, it had to do with those who've died before us.
Yeah, I know I've said this a lot, but maybe she's new, and I don't do eschatology. I don't do a lot of study of end times. Spend very little time in the book of Revelation. So for me to go ahead and throw an answer out on that would be wrong, having not studied that lately. I've read every bit of the book of Revelation, but I just not studied lately, so I can't answer that question. We do know that the 12 apostles will be sitting on thrones judging the 12 tribes. So that part we know. That verse is something that we talked about. But that's an end time sort of event thing that is going to happen the way it's going to happen, and I don't worry about it a whole lot. Remember, my whole focus is on you doing what you need to do so that you end up where you're supposed to end up. Sorry, Bonnie, I just don't have an answer for that.
All right, Amy asks, please clarify sin as a difference between missing the mark and transgression of Torah.
Sin is all of those things. Okay? Sin is the transgression, the trespassing, either by omission or by commission, the law. Okay? Not doing something you were supposed to do according to the law is a transgression by omission. Okay? You are when you're dealing with Torah, anything that doesn't comply with it is sin. Okay? That could be missing the mark. That could be trespassing on it. That could be transgressing against it. It could be doing it by neglect or omission. Those are all sin. So hopefully that answered the question.
All right, we got Don Taylor. In regards to verse 12:8, what does become sharers mean? Isn't it good to share?
Okay, I didn't hear because Rabbi Tom dropped his cane. That's okay. I couldn't hear the question when your thing dropped.
Right.
Say it again.
Don Taylor, in regards to verse 12:8, what does become sharers mean? Isn't it good to share?
All right, it's in Hebrews 12:8.
12:8, yes.
Okay, no, what he's saying here is that he says you are without discipline, and he's just saying, look, in case you're wondering, he's saying all of you are part of that mess. And I think I said that as part of that. So you're sharing in the fact that this is an instruction that you are all sharing, and you all have moments of your being undisciplined. He says, if you are without discipline, of which all you have become sharers, then you are legitimate and not sons. So you've all participated in this. It's just another way of phrasing the idea of you're all guilty of this. So wake up and start fixing that. So it's not about sharing and not sharing. It's simply saying you all have a piece of this at times. It's not something that, discipline is not something that comes up 24/7. In other words, sometimes you receive it, sometimes you don't. What he's saying is that when you don't, at that moment you're demonstrating you're illegitimate. You're not really a son or a daughter. You're not receiving it. He says, so it's like saying is, by the way, I'm talking to this guy over here, but by the way, all of you are part of this. This applies to everybody here. In case anybody's thinking, oh, he's talking to them.
You have shares in that company.
That's right. Go ahead.
All right, Beverly's question. How did Sarah's laughing relating to her becoming pregnant transition into belief?
Now, when they put Sarah in here and the way they explain it, I don't really understand what the writer was trying to say, so I can't explain that, all right? But Sarah had already led a life up to that point of basically following her husband, calling him master, and trusting his relationship with Yahweh and following it in belief. Okay? She laughed because she just thought it was kind of absurd and funny that after all these years, now you're going to give me a baby? I'm 99 years old. Now you're going to give me a baby. You know. I mean, this is, or 90 years old, whatever she was. He was 99. So the idea, like, you're going to give me a baby now? Now, of course, that wasn't, the idea of that he couldn't, but it was disrespectful. Okay? So when it talks about by belief, Sarah herself was enabled to conceive, and she bore a child. So I don't think that we could read out of that she didn't believe he could do it. I think she just thought it was kind of funny that at this point, now you're going to do this? Instead of just embracing that he had his own plan for it. That was her problem. She couldn't see that there was a reason why now was the time for it. So that part she was lacking an understanding of, but she still believed that it could happen, Okay?
All right, this is a comment from Yanni. So it's amazing. When you take a stand and walk the walk, Abba blesses you and protects you. Then you learn more and walk more, and blessings and protection repeat.
Amen. Well said, Yanni. And Yanni's over in Denmark, and I believe is coming to Sukkot. Yep. Can't wait to see you, Yanni.
Yep. William Faulkner, what is the difference between discipline and persecution? Are there markers that one can recognize?
Okay, if you don't know the difference, then you've not experienced discipline correctly. Okay? You would understand that discipline, it says, as a father would discipline a son. Of course, a lot of you were persecuted by your fathers and abused by fathers, etc., so you don't understand what that rightly looks like. But a loving father who's trying to get you successfully to become an adult and to grow into that place is going to need to discipline you along the way to keep you on the straight and narrow path. And so that's not persecution. Okay? Persecution is when you're getting and you don't deserve to be getting attacked. That's persecution. Discipline, you earned it, you deserved it, it's yours. You just don't like it. Okay? So, as a matter of fact, some of you are being persecuted by family members because you're keeping commandments in Torah now, and you don't deserve to be attacked for it. And what you're doing really doesn't generally affect them, but they're attacking you anyway. That's persecution. Discipline would be a congregational leader saying, if you're going to continue doing whatever it is that you're doing, I may have to put you outside the camp. That's not persecution, that's discipline. Does that make sense? Okay, so the problem is that we have a hard time understanding the differences because we haven't seen enough of the right and good, proper discipline, so it all feels like abuse and persecution. And therefore, when someone is disciplining you because you have no context for what it should look like when it's done right, you don't like it and you attack it and you judge it, and you start telling all of the people around that, the rabbi did this to me and he was so mean to me and he did, and I get that all the time. Can you believe he talked to me like that? Believe it. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. Adrian and Patricia Bogle, questions. In light of Hebrews 11:39-40, is Lazarus and the rich man in Abram's bosom evidence of a level of consciousness or awareness we may have after death?
All right, let's deal with that when I do part 4 of the Millennium in the Kingdom, and we deal with what happens and doesn't happen in life and death. I can tell you that the Abraham's bosom parable has nothing to do with what happens when you die, okay? That's not the point of the parable. It's a parable. It's not a description of actual events that play out. It's not an instruction on how things happen when you die and what does it. There was a reason for that as a parable. There was a message in that parable, as other things are taught in parables are not literal either. Okay? But I will teach that as part of the teaching that is coming. I know I promised it a long time, but we'll get there where I'll do the teaching on the Millennium Kingdom Part 4, which was supposed to be what does or does not happen when you die. Okay? I've already given you so many hints about it. I've talked to you about the dead know nothing. We talked about it today, okay, about all these having died, not receiving the promises. I mean, it's in a lot of the teachings, it's all in there. But we'll piece it all together, verse by verse, and I have the notes for it and everything. I've done it in the past. I just haven't had a chance to do it now.
Okay, Seth, his question is about Hebrews 3:12 through 4:3, emphasis on 4-1. It's related to today's theme. Basically, we cannot afford to become comfortable in our walk before Yah. So, emphasis 4:1, chapter 4, 1 and 2.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the rest of Hebrews that I did not bring in on purpose because they're going to be part of another teaching that deals with a lot of the things in Hebrews that are a little challenging for people to understand. So I didn't go there simply because, and actually that Hebrews 4 I've dealt with that in other places several times. Okay, that has been a part of, I don't remember what other teachings it would have been in, but it was in a couple of other places, okay? So we'll deal with that, I promise, at another point as part of another teaching. But there's a lot of things in other chapters of Hebrews chapter 6 and chapter, I can't remember where else we had, that there was many other things. There's a place that talks about dead works and good works and all kinds of other things to do with works that we're not covering in this teaching at this time, okay? But we will cover it because it connects up into the whole Melchizedekian thing that I need to teach at some point coming here in the future. I know Aubrey's out there going, I know Rabbi said this. She's got my list of teachings I keep promising.
All right, this last one's for Robert. Does the rule of Yahweh use someone outside the camp to discipline someone inside the camp?
One more time. Does
or will Yahweh use someone outside the camp to discipline someone inside the camp?
It does that all the time. But you got to remember, there's a difference between discipline, okay, meaning just a punishment or chastisement, versus instructional discipline, okay, corrective discipline. You know, Babylon coming and taking taking them away, that was outside people coming to deal with. The Assyrians coming and taking them away, that was outside disciplining. However, they were told, this discipline is not something you're going to be able to fix for so many generations. You're just going to have to accept the discipline. But they were told instructionally, this is because you did this, this, and this. Or because you didn't do this, this, and this. So yes, outside people are used often to bring discipline or punishment or chastisement. I'm talking about here in a discipling type of way. Discipline, by the way, if you're going to be disciple, understand discipline and disciple are almost the same word. Okay, almost all of one is inside the other word. And so, you know, you have this idea of corrective instruction where there's consequences when instruction is not followed, but then the person's there to keep continuing helping you along the path. Discipline is often brought in terms of the idea of consequences, and outside people other than those in the camp are often used to bring consequences. Okay, Lisa?
Yeah, just something I noticed when you were reading was about in Hebrews 11, verse 7, it talks about Noah's belief, but not only that, but he feared. It says, by belief, Noah, having been warned of what was yet unseen, having feared, prepared an ark and his house, through which he condemned the world. And then also, so it talks about him fearing who he was fearing. And then in other verses below, talks about, trying to find the other verses. I did have them marked, sorry. In 27, Moses not fearing the wrath of the sovereign. And then another couple verses down, it talks about, I know there is others, but it talks about how they feared Yahweh rather than man.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So they made decisions against the powers of the physical, choosing to believe the supernatural, the Father.
The invisible. Okay, well, that's a good point. Look, there's a reason why the fear of Yahweh teaching is so important. You probably should listen to it at least once a year. When I used to go and travel and speak, which I didn't do ever very much, but whenever I did do it, that was almost always the teaching that I did, either that or the one on overcoming, because those are really important places to start, okay? And so, if you want to recommend anything to anybody new, one of the things you might recommend is fear of Yahweh. If they don't fear Yahweh and understand what that fear looks like, what a proper fear is, they will not do anything else. That's why Deuteronomy 10:12 starts out with fearing Yahweh. And now Israel, what does Yahweh expect of you? But to fear him, okay? So nothing actually good follows if you don't have that. You're going to do everything else sort of occasionally or weekly, not, W-E-A-K, not very strongly. You're not going to do things, in a real committed way if the fear isn't there. You may do it somewhat because you like the idea of what he's offering, the reward that he offers, but the commitment, the strength to do it comes out of the awe, respect, and reverence for him. And that fear, which I've described as the fear of disappointing and letting him down. The fear of having him look at you with his head hanging down, shaking it, going, why are you doing that? What are you doing? What are you thinking? That should be our fear. Hey, listen, if you're married, especially you guys, that's a look you don't like to see out of your wife. Because you look over, you just did something, and she's looking at you like, I can't believe you just did that. Guys, we all know what that looks like. We've done that at least once. Okay? So just imagine you do that when you do your other things, and the father looks down with the same look. Like, what are you doing? I can't believe you just did that, All right. Anybody else? Was that it on the live stream? We're good? All right. Shabbat shalom. Shavua tov. All right. Have a good week, everyone. Blessings to you. We love you.